Cheekyricho's Baklava. Hi and welcome to Cheekyricho's Baklava. This Turkish pastry dessert is kept at room temperature, keeps for a couple of weeks out of the fridge, tastes delicious and is very easy to make. The first thing we're going to do is get our baking pan, which we're going to be cooking this in, and spread our walnuts into it and pop it into a 180-degree oven for about 2 minutes until they become fragrant. Don't overcook these because they will get bitter. Just while the nuts are in the oven toasting, we're going to get our raw sugar, all of our raw sugar, pop it into the Thermochef, speed 7 for 10 seconds. Okay, this is what you should have, raw caster sugar. So we're going to divide that into 2 sections. 200 grams of it goes into the syrup and 75 grams of it goes into the baklava nut mixture. We'll separate that now by using our scales. Okay, we just put a bowl on top of our Thermochef scales, zero it to tare it, and we want 75 grams, which is going to go into the nut mixture, 75 grams. And the balance is put to one side for the syrup. No need to wash the bowl, the nuts are going in there now and they're going to be mixed with sugar anyway. Put that syrup, sugar to one side. To our Thermochef jug we are going to add our almonds, our whole almonds, and our pistachios that have been shelled. Speed 7 for 5 seconds, and this is what you should have. You've still got visible chunks, but you've got powder as well, and that's exactly what we're after. Don't do it any more than that because you'll end up with a nut butter. Now just tip the pistachios and almonds into a bowl, and now we're going to put our walnuts in, which are still hot from the oven. Don't burn yourself here. Now this is the baking dish that we're going to be using. So we're going to, because it's heated already and we do have to brush it with butter, we're just going to pop our butter into that, just sit it in the oven for a little while, a minute or so while we prepare the walnuts, just to melt. The heat of that tray may actually melt it, but I'll just give it a few seconds in the oven. Now for walnuts, we're just going to pop in our cinnamon, nice teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and our already ground up caster sugar, 75 grams of our caster sugar. And we're going to mix this on speed 6 for 5 seconds. This is smelling pretty good and it's quite warm. So just tip that mixture now in with the pistachios and the almonds. So you've got all of your nuts there, your walnuts, your pistachios, your almonds, 75 grams of sugar, and a good teaspoon of your cinnamon. Now we're just going to give this a mix through to stir these nuts and sugar and cinnamon together, and just set that to one side. Now we're just going to make our syrup. So 200 grams of raw caster sugar, 300 grams of water, 80 grams of lemon juice, and the finely pared rind of 1 lemon. Okay, with our syrup also is our honey. You could use normal caster sugar for this recipe, but I find the rich colour and the caramelised flavour that the raw sugar gives it is really quite nice. It enhances it. We leave the measuring cup off because we want it to evaporate and to thicken slightly, and all those sugars to dissolve and amalgamate. We will be removing that lemon rind before serving, so we don't want it blitzed up. That's why we're not increasing the speed beyond 2. Speed 2, 100 degrees for 10 minutes. Okay, our butter is well and truly melted in the oven. We're just going to turn it out into a heat-proof bowl, and we're going to begin assembling our baklava. So to do that, we're going to brush the sides well of our tray with butter. Make sure it's all well coated. Now just measure the sides of your tray roughly. We're going to cut our Filo pastry just with a pair of kitchen shears to roughly the size of the base of the tray. One pastry on top of that, and then when we're working we can just cover it with its own wrapper that it came in. So the first thing we're going to do is work quickly here, otherwise you have to use a damp cloth to cover this, is take a couple of sheets of your pastry, which is very fine like paper, layer it in the bottom of the tray, just cover your pastry again, give it a brush with some butter, and a very liberal sprinkle of our nut mixture. Another 2 sheets of our pastry, cover it again as before, another brush with butter, and another very liberal sprinkle of our nut mixture. And another 2 sheets of our pastry. And we continue all the way through until you get to the top of the dish. Cover our pastry again. Dab with our butter. Doesn't have to be painted all over. There's going to be bald patches, don't worry about that. Another liberal sprinkling of our nut mixture. Another 2 sheets of our pastry. And we continue until we get to the last layer, in which case we will put about 6 to 8 sheets of pastry on the top layer. The thickest layer is the top layer. Okay, now this is going to be our last layer here. So we just put our last 2 sheets before our last nut layer. It smells pretty good. Now we're putting 6 layers on, or 8 layers, whatever you like, but we're going to brush in between each 2 layers with butter as before. Now we just tuck in the sides of the top sheet just as if it was the blanket all around the sides, and brush it well with butter, including the edges, because anything that's a little bit wispy or thin will definitely crack and burn. Okay, using a very sharp knife, we're just going to cut down nearly to the bottom. We'll be cutting it again when it's finished into diagonals. Just be careful when you're doing this, because you don't want to compromise the top if you can help it. If you hold the knife on it where your fingers are, they won't pick up the pastry. Now we turn it side on, and then we make our diagonals this way. So just be very careful here, because it's going to want to lift up with your fingers. There's not much you can do about that, except take your time. Our syrup is now cooked and it's cooling. Into the oven we go, 180 degrees for about 30 minutes. Okay, our syrup has cooked. We're just going to pick out our lemon rind, we don't need that, and set that aside to cool. It'll be poured over our baklava when it comes out of the oven. Our baklava is straight from a hot oven. Now we've got our cooled syrup, and we are just going to drizzle it over the top. You should hear it sizzling. You hear that? As it goes in. And we leave it for a couple of hours to cool completely, and then we score it completely to the bottom. Now the reason that we do that is it stops the syrup from running and just sitting in the bottom. It's actually got to soak through all of these layers and wet all the nuts. A very clever recipe, really. So see if you can get it into all these little cracks. The syrup is livening up the cinnamon fragrance, and that will soak into all of those layers and make a really delicious, sticky, sweet pastry. So we'll just pop that somewhere to cool for a couple of hours, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's cut. Our baklava is well and truly cool now. We're just going to slice all the way through to the bottom, and I will serve up a slice and show you what it looks like. I hope you enjoyed this little cooking demonstration of Cheeky Richo's baklava. If you'd like to see more interesting recipes and ideas, please just check out our Cheeky Richo channel, and don't forget to please subscribe, and do come back and visit us again soon. We have so much more to show you, and we're uploading lots of videos every week. And thank you very much for watching. Have a lovely day. Cheeky Richo's baklava. Thank you for watching.